Okay, now let's see how we can define a class method in order to process class attributes. This class has been taken from the previous code. As you see, we have a class student and we have 4 class attributes. Now, in order to define a class method, first of all, I have to define a method. And usually we use def keyword to do that. And let me say that I want to define a class method to calculate the percentage of number of undergraduate students to the total number of students. So I'll say def get number, or let me say undergraduates students. And then the first parameter, as we did before, should be CLS, which is a reference to my class. And don't forget the colon as usual. But so far, you don't have a class method, even though I say here CLS. Why? Because what make a method a class method is this decorator, which is class method, at class method. So now I have a class method. And don't forget that CLS and self are not a keyword in Python, they are just convention in the Python community. Now, in order to calculate the undergraduate student percentage, here let me say not students, let me say percentage. So I'll calculate the total number of students, which is equal to combination between undergraduate plus number of postgraduates. So simply, what is the percentage of undergraduate student? It's simply this number divided by the total number of students. As you see, the process is very simple and it's very straightforward. Now let's see how we can call this class method. First, I'll define 2 students, and as you see here, as my previous example, I have 2 students, one undergraduate and the second is postgraduate. Then you can call this class method from the class name, as we have done before when we want to access to the class attribute. So I'll say student dot then get undergraduate percentage. Let me just run this cell to make sure that everything is defined, and let me run this. So I got 0.5. Why 0.5? Very simple. Because I have 2 students. One is undergraduate and the second is graduate. So the total number is 2. 1 divided by 2 equal to 0.5. Very simple and very straightforward. Before I end this code session, I want to show you the last idea about these class methods. Sometimes we can use class methods as what we call an alternative constructor. So how I can use this class method as an alternative constructor and why we have to do that will be explained right now. First of all, let me take some spaces here and I'll come to here. Now, why I could need an alternative constructor? Sometimes the input parameters to your init method could have different shape from the expected one. For example, now I have age instance attribute. But what if the student doesn't want to enter his age? He wants to enter his birthday. So, in other words, from his birthday, I can know what is his age, but my class accepts age only. So in this case, I'll define a class method. This method will take the birthday, will transform this birthday into age, and then will define the object and it will return it back to me. Let's see how we can do that. Let me get back to my class here and I'll paste this method, which is the following. So it's a class method, so I use this decorator. Its name, create student from birthday. And look here, the parameters to these methods are exactly the same, the parameters that my constructor takes. So here I have ID, first name, last name, age. Here I have ID, first name, last name. But look, the last one is different, which is birthday. But it's a very simple process. How I can convert birthday into age? Very simple. So we have datetime module. So you have to import this module. So I'll come to here and I'll say from datetime, import datetime in order to not get a name error. Then in datetime, we have a method, its name now, which will give me the current date. So if I subtract from current date the birthday, this will give me, and I take the day's value, this will give me how many days I live so far. If I divide this number by 365, which is the total number of days per year, I'll get my age, and that's all. Once I have the age, I will say return CLS, and then I will put all of these parameters. Why this will work? Because as I remembered before, CLS is just a reference to your class, which means CLS represents your class. CLS in this case is just a student class. So I am defining right now an object from that class. Let's see this now method in action. Let me get back here. Let me paste the following. Very straightforward. Look what I say. I'll say student equal to student dot create student from birthday. And the arguments are 1, which means the ID, Jackma, the name, the first name and the last name. And now I am not passing the age. I am passing the birthday of that student. And I am defining a datetime object for that purpose. Now in order to make sure that what I will get in the output of this method is an object from the class student, simply I'll print the type of this object. and I will print the object. Let me say print student dot full name. Run. Let's see what I'll get here. Let me put here another print statement. As you see here, I got the class student. So the type of this object is from the class student, and this is what's expected. And the full name of this student is Jack Ma, and this is what I have passed here. And that's all for this code session. Now let's recap what we have learned so far in this lecture. First of all, we have talked about class attributes, and we see that these attributes are attributes that belongs to the class itself rather than to a specific object. And usually, I use class attributes in order to define the attributes that have a common value among all the objects inside my class. And in order to handle and process these class attributes, usually I define class methods. So simply, class methods are the methods that have access to the class attributes. They can process, handle, and update these attributes, but they don't have any access to the instance attributes. Now let's review together the syntax. So in order to define a class attribute, it's very simple. Just we list all the attributes below the class name, and these attributes belong to the class itself. And in order to define a class method, we define it as any normal method in Python, but we use the decorator at class method. And usually, the first parameter that is passed to the class method is CLS, which is a reference to the class itself. Again, don't forget the colon in order to not get a syntax error. Now please refer to the lecture resources in order to find some challenges to practice what you have learned so far in this lecture. Thank you very much for your time, and if you are available, join me in the next lecture.